mainly the youth programme, but also working with some of the seniors, not necessarily on the table so much, but talking to them about different things, lifestyle, etc., management, and working sort of fairly close with Alan Cook with the senior programme, and discuss with him how he sees the progress of the players and what they need to do to develop and produce results that they've achieved recently, which has been fantastic, phenomenal performances. So overall in charge, but the main job this year for me is the youth programme, trying to develop that and improve some of the things that we're doing with the youth programme.
Me next? Yeah. I'm Matt Stanforth. My job title is National Talent Coach. I work closely with Nick and Alan. There's probably three strings to my role at the moment. So firstly, assist Nick with the England Youth Programme, both on the sort of the national camps we hold across the season, as well as the fortnightly sessions and seeing the players on a one-to-one basis. So working closely with Nick about what the players need to work on, if they've got competitions coming up or as part of their development programme. This season I've also been the senior women's captain, so I've had the opportunity to work with our top senior women at the European Championships in October that was in Russia, Commonwealth Championships in India, and recently the World Team Championships in Kuala Lumpur. As well as captain on the table, I'll also work with them on the table as well. And then I'm also being responsible for the Talent Development Centre programme we have, so working closely with Plymouth and the other centres around the country to make sure we have that joined up approach from the national setup into the sort of talent development centres, helping the coaches within those centres to develop their programme further, help with any issues or anything that may be coming up, so that there's a joined up pathway from a local level to up to a national level.
I'm Shaun Marples. I work for the British Table Tennis Association for people with disabilities. So my role is I'm the pathway manager / coach. So what my role basically is to support the whole structure of the pathway, right from performance right down to grassroots, but to also look at the next generation coming forward. So in terms of like our programme, our main focus this year is Rio in the Paralympics in September. Funded obviously through UK Sports, so we have a 4-year funding cycles through that. My personal role is to look after the youngsters coming through. So I'm in charge of a pathway programme and a development programme for these athletes. We get them in, we're based in Sheffield, and then also linking with the home nations as well. So we're linking in with Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales and England, building up their national programmes, and then looking at ways of talent recruitment, how we get new talent into these systems, whether it be wheelchairs or standing players, and taking it from there really.
Any questions?
Well, I've got hopefully a friendly question. So why did we do as well as we did in the World Team Championships? Would you dare to say there were any underlying reasons, or was it just a good tournament?
I think it's a long process that's happened with the players. It's different age groups. Paul is the oldest, and you've got Liam 22, Sam 20, and they've all been through a process of learning how they play their game plan, how their style. And Paul in particular has gone through different stages. When he was 16, 17, he was one of the best players in the world for his age, probably number 3 in the world at one stage, under 18, won the European Youth Championships, was playing a game that was akin to most of the top Chinese young players at the time. And playing the style he played, he needed to be super fast, super fit, in every way. He went abroad, started playing professionally in clubs, and started playing a little bit more like European players, which probably didn't suit his mentality or his style. ended up really being, not necessarily in the wilderness, but was, you know, still a very, very strong player, but his game plan wasn't where he needed to be. And I think over the last 2 years, he had a major operation a couple of years ago, prior to the Commonwealth Games, and his mentality, etc., from then was very, very strong, very determined, and he got back into the idea of what he needed to do from a game plan point of view, which actually does coincide with this stuff that we are trying to get all our players to try and achieve. Not necessarily one particular style, and you've got to do things this way or you've got no chance, but an idea of how you go about trying to beat people. And he actually naturally started to improve that, but there was a lot of encouragement from our side as well. And with his work rate and the help that he got from various people, including strength and conditioning people, etc., he started to improve and improve. I mean, he won the Spanish Open, got to the final of the Russian Open, started improving. So he was always someone who was going to lose a major event. The trick was to get 3 players doing the same thing. And Alan Cook, he's not here, but he needs a lot of credit for getting the 3 players in a frame of mind, not just 2 weeks before the competition, but an idea of what they could achieve, what they should achieve, how they should play, etc., etc. And you could say it was luck, or you could say it was, you know, a sort of a team effort that they went to the World Championships under pressure, because there was only 3 players that went there, and the team didn't start off great for slightly different reasons, but the camaraderie and the work ethic and the way they could play their game plans and the standard that they were at, they started to play better as the tournament went on. Other teams probably got a little bit more nervous, etc., etc. And they started, all 3 of them started playing probably their best table tennis all at once. And the management, while the team was out there, was very good as well. So they were kept in a real good frame of mind, and they started believing, they probably believed before, but actually when you're in an event, you get a feeling about things that are happening, and it can either be negative or positive or whatever, and sometimes a coach or a captain or person in charge can influence that. And I think overall, the vibes as the tournament went on was that all 3 of them were playing really well. There was a chance. You can say that the draw was in our favour, etc. But you know, the match against Japan, the players showed that they can beat the best, just about the best players in the world, and it was because all 3 of them were there doing it. So I think it's a combination of how the players have evolved over the last few years, but also probably more importantly the idea of the team and working together, and the belief that they all had in each other, and you know, helping each other when things weren't going quite so well, and having a game, a match game that's got a chance of beating anybody. So I think that's one of the reasons, well, the main reasons why they achieved the level that they achieved. And I don't think it's a one-off in the sense of their performance. You know, to win a medal at the next World Team Championships is going to be incredibly difficult. And they might play even better and not quite achieve that, but their performances are akin to where they are, and they can improve on that. You know, Paul Drinkall can improve his performance, and the other 2 definitely can. So, you know, as far as those 3 players are concerned, the future is still very, very bright, and they can go on and improve and do great things for England as well as themselves.
I should say that I've got a Japanese teammate who went and bought an England replica shirt of the semi-final.
Yeah, so yes, I mean, and the players need you know, a lot of credit because at the end of the day, they're the ones who've got to go out there and do it.
Sorry, I suppose the psychological part of it becomes really important because they can do the strokes, but it's bringing them up to what they're capable of at the right moment.
Yeah, I think there's a few things that in the youth programme, and our overall sort of philosophy about how our players need to develop is they need to be psychologically very strong, and we need to be bulletproof. And we've got a saying, FAB. They need to be the fittest. They need to be
Aggressive.
They need to be aggressive in how they play, and they need to be bulletproof mentally. And how we do that is obviously, you know, work in progress. We think we're on the right lines, but again, going back to the three boys at the World Championships, all three of them have got games where they can beat anybody. If they play well, they can beat anyone, rather than hoping that the other person doesn't play quite so well. If they play well, they can win every point, in theory. You know, they've got the game where if they've got a chance, they can win the point. And we've had players in the past who've played for England who can't do that. Still very, very good, but they won't beat the best players if the best players are playing well, because they don't have the game to do it. Doesn't matter whether they're mentally strong enough, they just don't have the game to do it. So how they play is really important. Mental stability to start off with, and then the toughness is really important, and also being able to think about what they need to do when they're on the table, and the preparation. So all those things are incredibly important, and I would suggest that everything that happened prior to the Worlds and during the Worlds was based on those facts. And the youth programme is about developing that in the players at a younger age. So they need to, when they are learning how to play table tennis and they're in the talent development centres, they need to develop a game that's got a chance of winning at whatever level they aspire to. Whether it's top world ranked players that they need to beat, or these kind of players, or whatever the level is. And we feel that there's a particular way that we would like players to play, but if players want to defend, as in put backspin on the ball and they want to play off the table, then they can't hope that the person's going to miss. They've got to have a game where they're going to make sure that they put pressure on the person, either with spin variation or play faster, stay close to the table, be able to attack any loose ball. So we don't want defenders to defend because they've got bad footwork. They need to be lightning quick. So we're not suggesting that, you know, we develop a player on the defensive side because they can't move. They've got to move even better, quicker. So if they want to defend, fantastic, but they've got to have weapons to beat the opposition. If they play with short pimples, then we aren't going to teach them to topspin. You know, because if you've got short pimples, putting spin on the ball is a challenge. So we would teach them to stay closer to the table, whether it's male or female. We teach them to stay closer to the table, try and hit the ball at the top of the bounce virtually all the time if possible, sometimes earlier. They've also got to be able to play against the ball when it's below peak of bounce. And one of the issues we have with a number of coaches on the circuit is that, you know, a number of coaches say, well, if you play with short pimples, you shouldn't try and topspin. Well, if you play against backspin and the ball's low, or you take the ball table height or below, and you've got short pimples, if you try and smash the ball, it might go on. The chances are it probably won't go on. If you don't smash, you've got two options. You either get the ball on the table with no spin, or you do something else. If you get the ball on the table with no spin, you've lost against top players, because there's nothing there. It's a medium pace ball. Person on the other side thinks it's their birthday, and they make the winner. So we would advocate that those players need to have an ability to spin the ball with an action that comes from here as well as the basic actions that we would use to hit the ball. And so they would need to be able to have the ability to skin the ball and produce topspin. One of our best players who just won the national championships, Tintin Hall, plays penholder. She plays with short pimples on the forehand, and she uses the reverse side, the backhand side, and plays with smooth reverse rubber on the backhand. So we're getting her to topspin and drive and block on the backhand side, and we're getting her to attack at various speeds, try and improve her variation of hitting the ball hard. But she's got to try and make sure that she hits the ball at the top of the bounce the vast majority of the time. And when the ball's low, she's got to be able to topspin the ball with the short pimples as well as with the reverse side. The issue that she has when she plays against the best players in the world is when she opens up with a forehand, if she can't smash, then what's happened in some tournaments is she's trying to play safe, she's lost the point. Because she's trying to play safe with no spin, no pressure, no pressure on the ball. So we want players who've got short pimples to have the ability to, if they play against backspin, or the ball is low, they've got to have something other than just smash or get the ball on the table. They've got to be able to spin the ball. But primarily they are trying to play with speed variation, and that variation has got to be huge variation. So the smash, when they hit the ball hard, it's got to be hard. It can't be a small variation because players get used to it. The best players who you play against will get used to slight variations, and then you've got a problem. You've got to have more variation. If you're twice as fast as someone and you can play at that speed all the time, you're going to beat them. Unless you start playing slowly because they start playing slowly, or vary the speed. If you can't cope with their variation and you slow down or you start making mistakes, okay, there's a problem. But you train the player not to have that problem, so they can still hit the ball at the top of the bounce. And when the player at the other side plays with variation because they can't cope with the speed, when they play slower, the player who's trained to be able to play hard all the time has more time, they see the variation, they know what's happening, they see the spin variation, and they attack. Because it's easier, because the ball's coming over slow. So if that player's trained properly, and they've got the speed, and they've got the knowledge, and they understand variation, and see what's happening, then they are putting the pressure on the opponent all the time. And the Chinese players, I have to say, generally are far faster and take the ball earlier than all the other nations, apart from England. No, but they take the ball earlier. The men stay closer to the table than most of the other male players in the world, and the women are close to the table. Lots of the other nations are trying to emulate that, staying close to the table, backhand top spinning mainly, top spinning or hitting hard on the forehand, staying close to the table. But the Chinese just seem to be faster, and even the other Asian players drift off, even the Japanese players, who made a massive step forwards 2 or 3 years ago, with their backhands. Mainly forehand players with fairly good backhands, and then all of a sudden they have all these players, male and particularly females, really strong backhands. And you thought, right, this is a new era for Japan. Well, the Chinese are just killing them because they're just too fast. It's the same thing. Speed and the variation within that plus spin is one of the main reasons why the Chinese are beating everyone. So we are trying to again advocate that if you want to play with short pimples, then okay, this is a plan of how you should play. If you want to play with defensive, that, and the most popular and at the moment the most effective way of beating players is to topspin. All the world champions since I've been around, apart from Jiang Jiang in the 80s, are all been topspin players. Chuang Si Tung probably wasn't, but that was in the 60s, I believe. The defensive game is very, very difficult, but there's been a resurgence of men and women because they can attack with a topspin, not a smash. Again, when I was younger, I was told that defenders defend, they don't topspin the smash, because if the topspin, it lets the other person back in. Yeah, if you topspin like that, it does. But if you've got a foreign topspin, like one of the Chinese players who came to England and played for England for a short period of time, he had a bullet foreign topspin. Just so happened he was one of the best players in the world. You know, defending when he had a bullet forehand. So how players play is incredibly important, and how we develop those players, and they need to buy into the fact that that's what they need to do if they want to be strong players and win internationally. You've got to have a strong game. You can't just hope that the person's going to miss. You can't just get the ball into it. No matter what sort of game you play, you can't just hope to win a tournament by getting the ball back. It just doesn't happen. And top spinning with the backhand and top spinning the forehand, even if someone top spins the ball back to you, we'll call it a reloop or counter top spin, or whatever the terminology is that we're using at the moment. That's what the players do. And one of the coaches from I don't know, it's Croatia or somewhere, they analysed I think the European Championships or the World Championships 2 or 3 years ago, and the most successful players are the ones who could reloop rather than the ones who opened up first. So the ones who opened up first, yeah, that's great, but the most successful people were the ones who could reloop. So irrespective, the reader, all the players are trying to get in first with a top spin most of the time. Okay, tactically it changes very, very slightly, and sometimes it's best to flick out wide and make them open up, or whatever the tactic is. But most players are trying to get in first with the top spin against whatever comes over. But your reloop is so important. And if you can't reloop, and if someone gets in, you get the ball back, you're actually on the defensive straight away. And our youth squad, we're onto them all the time about trying to take the ball early and reloop and read the spin, and then eventually all the other things that come in, be tactically aware, don't just play to the person's back all the time, and that's down to either poor practice or regular footwork practices all the time, or whatever it is. Players get programmed into playing the players' backs instead of playing awkward places, and that's down to sometimes the training regime, but also sometimes the fact that they don't think, even though they've been told. So all these things that happen, we try and replicate match situations in the training hall, as well as technical development, and an idea, getting back to the idea of what sort of game you're going to play, how are you going to beat the opponent. There's got to be a plan of how you're going to beat people, rather than just play, and I've got nice technique, but I'm not going to hit the ball too hard, otherwise I might make a mistake, and it's like the other. And then the problem for the coach then is, how do you develop the improvement in the speed, etc., etc., etc. And you've got to monitor that then. As the coach in charge of the training session, you've got to monitor and try and gauge where the players are and just push them a little bit more. All the psychological things then come into play. Some players you can push more, some players you can't. Some players will plat off for a while and then come on. Some players get stronger earlier, etc., etc. So all those things come into play. So you can't expect everyone to just do that, and the whole squad does that. But there's got to be an idea and a plan about what that player's going to do. Where do you see that player going? So you've got an idea, nothing's set in stone, but you've got to have an idea about how you're going to train those players, and what you expect them to achieve as far as their game plan is concerned. Not, well, I want them to be number 10 in Europe in 3 years' time. That's not how they're going to get there. That's the idea. What are you going to do to get them there? And what do they need to do? So it's incredibly important that we have an idea about what the game is, what their game's going to be, and how we're going to beat the opposition. Knowing what the opposition are, knowing who they are, knowing how they play is really important as well. And then now, even I can press a button on a laptop and see the best players in the world play.
You do need need some help with pushing
I
it.
do, yeah. So I hit the off button. And when I first started playing, you were lucky if you had a 16 or was it 32 millimeter or 16 millimeter cine film or something that was probably 3 years old. And yeah, so now it's so easy to see what's happening, and it's important that the players, as well as the coaches, but the players see the opposition.
I mean, it seems to be important. That's quite important for English table tennis. I mean, if you compare with, it always strikes me if you compare with other sports like football. I mean, young kids, everybody, local league people, coaches, they all know what world-class football looks like because they've all seen it. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Table tennis, until perhaps very recently, if you ask, I mean, just do they basically know? Do people locally on the ground? Do they, you know, kids, coaches, like, do they know what
No.
world-class table tennis looks like? And you know, so
And that's why we, you know, things like this are so important regionally in different areas. Try and bring the masses, because we don't watch sport, we don't watch table tennis like we used to. You know, we used to compete in home and away basis, British League, things like that. We had that club ethos. I think that's something that is a negative. We all go now in certain standards now, you know, British League, Junior British League, we all go to one venue. And there's 36 or 40 odd tables there.
It's a fantastic weekend, but there's only those people who see it.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's part of what the talent programme is actually doing. It's actually regionalising that and becoming a sort of more of a focal point of table tennis. And I think that's where we're benefit. Things like this, you know, it's fantastic for a talent centre to bring the younger kids in to see the players. You know, they might have read about them maybe on a little news clip or something like that, but they haven't actually met them and seen them play in the flesh, because you can't see how fast it is on TV. And you know, to actually feel that and actually see them, I think that does a lot more for the good of our sport going forward.
And again, with the idea of how players should play, we talk about the defender, we talk about the shot pin, the tin, we talk about the top spin. Players are staying a bit closer to the table than they were a few years ago, particularly the Chinese, but all the players are trying to stay a little bit closer. The European men are not cutting on as quickly as they should in my humble opinion. You know, there's lots of players still get the ball at table height instead of trying to take the ball a bit early. But to actually play these types of games, you've got to be an athlete. There's no way in this world that you can expect a player to play the way we're suggesting unless they're athletes. There's no chance. And our budget is very, very small indeed. There's no funding from UK Sport or Sport England for the performance programme. But we feel it's so important, we actually employed a strength and conditioning expert to come in and talk and do programmes for our youth squad to build up the stuff that they need in their bodies so that they don't get injured as much, so the body's fit for purpose, and they train so that they can compete or play at the level that we need them to play. And I don't mean standard wise, I mean speed wise. And and that involves the whole thing with endurance, flexibility, power, speed, explosive movements. It's an explosive sport. We want to help players to learn how to play an explosive game, because that's how we beat people. We want to beat people rather than hope that they lose to us.
So I'll give you a bit of a breather, but I'll base it on these two, but on the similar kind of thing. What have you got set up then, especially for like the youth squad? What kind of requirements have they got to do to be in that squad?
Well,
In
we
terms of
sent
fitness and
yeah, for the England youth squad, we've set some benchmarks on some basic fitness tests. So the ones that we look at are the bleep test. Is everyone familiar with the bleep test yet? So to look at their sort of cardiovascular endurance. We look at some strength exercises, so how many press-ups in a minute, how many sit-ups in a minute. We look at some basic flexibility tests, so we have sit and reach. And then we also do one called a stride, where that's more looking at the sort of the groin and inner quad. We look at some jumping, so we can see what their explosive power is. And it's just initially we set this up 2 years ago on the T-test for speed. And the initial idea was to show that to be a national athlete is there is a fitness standard just to get them started. And every quarter we retest the players. So we monitor all that, and we set them targets for them to try and improve on their fitness levels. That will depend on the type of part of the season it is. So if they're coming into a heavy competition period, their endurance may have maintained from the last time, but the speed focus might be more in their physical programs. But overall, they all have, as Nick says, we have an SC coach who's giving them a program to work on some functional movement. Because a lot of those fundamental movement skills a lot of young players don't have now. If you think back to sport in school 10 years ago, when you were climbing, you were balancing and things like that, those skills are actually lacking now in younger players. And that's across every sport, because a lot of them are like this, rather, on the games and things like that, rather than actually going out and running and things like that. So in warm-ups and things, you have a lot more functional movement. And then more in the S&C side, as well as developing the whole body, is making sure there's a balance in their body as well. So from the injury side of things, we've noticed there's a lot more shoulder and hip injuries happening, especially on their dominant side. So making sure there's a balance there, so that's not a major problem in the future. Yeah.
What about psychology? So the mental, the same interesting. You've got the talents people.
We don't have any testing on the psychological side, but it's something we do speak to the players a lot about. So every player is different. So, for instance, we've got a player in there who, with frustration, when a shot isn't going quite well, struggles to deal with it, especially under pressure. So, and when they're tired. So, setting up situations where they're having to train when or play a match when they're tired. So maybe they've done some physical exercise and right, you're going to play a match now, and try and recreate that. And then, but that's more of a sort of an ongoing discussion with the players rather than a sort of a testing thing in terms of psychology. But that comes back to the trademarks that we're trying to instill as a squad in terms of being bulletproof.
And from
The psychology side is an area that we need to investigate a lot more. We have had sports psychologists working with the squads even sort of 10 or 15 years ago, and there's only been one period to my knowledge where it's been successful. We've had probably a lot of different sports psychologists. There's only been one period where you could see there was some success. The others, there hasn't been any success with the outcomes of it. So we've tried to take on board what's been spoken to the players, how, you know, and all the different ideas, and we're trying to talk to the players ourselves at the moment. We aren't the experts, but we've got the knowledge of table tennis and the experience of being at the international events. A lot of people involved have played internationally, but just as important are actually their captaining and coaching, and they've got international experience of doing that, so they understand the pressures. And we're trying to work with the players. And again, there's been some success, because some players who haven't been achieving, even though they should, are starting to achieve. And the important thing from our point of view is we get to know the players more and more and more, and understand where they're coming from, so that we can understand why they're having these issues. Sometimes it's frustration, more often than not, it's lack of confidence and nerves. Those are the two big areas, but there are other areas that are unique to certain players, anger and frustration, etc., or thinking they only want to play up and never want to play with someone who's as good as them or lower than them. And the psychological things that happen there can be devastating to the squad, but also to that player eventually, because they can only practice with the world champion eventually, otherwise they're not happy. So and so there's all sorts of different things on that psychological area, in that psychological area, where there needs to be a lot of input, but we don't do any testing either. So that's an area where we do need a lot of help. The testing side can then be evaluated, and then we try and help the players. What we can't do is to do psychological tests and screen players, right, well, you aren't going to be any good, because we don't have 10,000 players to choose. We might have 10. So the selection process for us in football is a little bit different. If you won't do as you're told in football, go somewhere else. We can't do that. We've got to keep hold of them for a while. Eventually, maybe after 1, 2, 3, 4 years, we say, okay, on your bike, mate. But we spent a lot of time with the player then, so it's in our interests to try and make sure that if we do find players that have got ability and have got lots of other things, but they're psychologically challenged, yeah, okay, we try and work with them, because we've got to. So it is an area where we need to develop more, but it's probably the most expensive area and the least successful area. If you look at stats, the success rate of let's certainly in table tennis, it's not all that high, and it's an incredible amount of money that's been spent over the last 20 years compared to the limited success that's happened. But it's really important, really important.
And any simple tips how to help little children to cope with stress?
Yeah, I mean,
some ideas.
Yeah, I mean, everything's all the. There's all sorts of different situations, isn't there? And to categorise. I mean, sometimes we do categorise players, but you can't really. You sort of say, well, those players are like this, those players are like that, but they're like that because of certain situations, and other players might not react that way. But they are we do put them in that category type of thing. But it's not as simple as, well, a few tips about being able to take stress or something. The process of improving is the most important thing for youngsters to focus on, rather than the outcomes all the time. Your ranking, winning an event, beating Jimmy, someone in the squad. If you look at outcomes all the time and you're looking, you've got to win this and you've got to do that, you've got to be ranked here, then you've got to have goals and targets. But depending on the circumstances of the player and what they feel like, it's the process of getting there that's the most important thing. And how you relate that and how you relate that to the player is important. And for me, I would find it difficult to say, oh, just do this, that. You need to know the player.
There's a lot of very good books out there.
Yeah.
I mean, a few years back, I did a diploma course with Newcastle University, a remote course, and a lot of coaches at the time did it. It was offered free.
Yeah.
And that was very, very helpful. And they produced a list of books, and we keep a block ad seven of them that were given to us by the region.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of easy information that I can understand. I'm not a great sports psychologist or anything, and you can help kids.
Yeah.
On the way.
I mean, we could. I mean, I think we've read sort of books as well on stuff, and the information you get is great. But the situation, all the situations are unique when you get a player, etc. And if you have all the information from experiences that other people have had, and you sort of the people who've studied it, that's important. But you need to also know the player, don't you? Knowing the player is the most important thing. And for parents, my two boys played sport, and if I mentioned anything to them, they said, "You're my dad, not my coach." So I quickly understood, and it kept my mouth shut. So as parents, it's very difficult to actually stand back and think, well, because sometimes the player's not doing what they should do, and possibly the coach isn't seeing it, and so how you deal with that is difficult. My advice in areas like you talk to the coach, you don't talk to the son or the daughter, you talk to the coach, and see what's what, and that's not an interfering parent. That's a good discussion, but you don't talk to the coach at 10 o'clock at night every night. But yeah, and so again the idea is about how you do things. I think tips from us is more difficult for us to say, well, just do this or just do that. And if you read the books that are out there, again, the advice and the information they give, it's difficult to just take that and just say, oh, I'll just do that with so-and-so because so-and-so might not react to it, even though someone says they should. No, they might not. So you've got to be able to see things from the player's point of view, and then try and work things out.
I suppose it's where the motivation comes from with the players. You said if they just look at their ranking or beating somebody, or to actually get motivated by doing a certain shot better.
That's right. Extrinsic, intrinsic
Yeah.
stuff, you know.
So if I can chip in, I studied sports psychology in uni, and it's a huge field. Like motivation is one aspect of it, but there's loads of stuff. For me as a coach, I think Ken's seen some of the things I used to do, but if you could think of an area that you need to maybe get the kids to improve on, concentration or wherever, or even put them under a situation, then you can kind of come up with a game for that. So for me, for concentration, I used to do some games where, say, I'm playing Shaun, and Matt's Shaun's partner, I've got Steve as my partner. Then, if I'm playing, I'll get Steve to stand behind me to try and put him off, and Matt behind Shaun to try and put me off. It's a bit of fun for the kids, but 2 or 3 shots, right, I'm trying to blank him out, and I'm concentrating on this match. So it's kind of like a little concentration game technique, and it's a bit of fun, and they don't realise they're learning from it.
So I'm allowed to wipe my hands.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want to. Just try and put him off so I can win the game.
Oh, that actually happens in the international circuit.
Yeah, but I think it's just, if you can try and come up with a game, put them in that kind of scenario. Again, under pressure stuff. I'm not sure if we've been through hot seat, the game, but if I'm playing you, if I lose that point, my partner's out of the game. So I got to win this point to make sure I don't leave him down, and he's back in the game. And that's just a fun little game. But there's loads of games, and I'm sure again, try and be the one thing that, from all my coaching kind of courses I do, is try to be as creative as possible. So if you can think of a scenario or a situation, I think, right, this person's concentration is rubbish, right, how can I come up with a game that's going to be fun, and you can work on that. So even at a young age, you still try and get them to start concentrating. I mean, the motivation and intrinsic stuff.
Well, one of the things about tonight, you know, it's quite an important evening for us as far as the young players out there, because they're practicing doing all the different things that they need to do. Then all of a sudden, they're now under pressure and there's people watching them. Are they doing the same stuff that they were doing in the training hall? 30% of them probably not, that I've seen, because they're under pressure. They're not necessarily under pressure because they're playing against someone who's going to beat them before the start, but they're under pressure because they're in an environment where everyone's watching them. And it's a change from the training camp. Now there's people watching, the match means something, it's staged, there's scores there, and so it changes the thing, and they're reacting differently. So just from a group point of view, it's good that we see that, and then we can talk to them tomorrow about it. Why, what's happened, what's happening, and all that, doing different types of games and putting them in different pressure situations in the training hall can help better concentration.
Well, I think you touched on it earlier. The stuff you do in the training hall is based on match play, so there's no reason why you can't try and modify a few things to put them under that pressure again. It's difficult because you might not get the same kind of pressure as on 10-0, but if you think they're
I
going
mean, one of the issues we've had with a couple of players, and one player who was a real good player, they think the practice is totally different to competition, totally. So their practice doesn't actually give them any motivation in the sense that they're playing well or they're playing badly. So the training they do is training and the practice, and they do whatever they do, but when they go into a competition, they don't think they're playing great because of the training. Or they don't think they're playing bad because of the training. They just wake up in the morning and, oh, I'm not playing very well, or I feel good today. And you know, that can't be the way to develop as a player and know that you're preparing for an event and you do all the things that you do, because there's nothing to fall back on. You know, and the situation when you start competing, there's nothing there, there's nothing to fall back on. You're under pressure of what you're going to do. There's nothing there for you to do. You've either got to be incredibly strong mentally that I'm just going to play, and I'm good enough to do this. But I haven't seen anyone do that in the years that I've sort of been involved. I haven't seen anyone do that. So the training hall is key, and you know how you create the environment and how the players think about what's happening in the training hall and the importance of the training can also help them to gain confidence to when they compete, and they can fall back on that experience to get them through nervous situations. I captained the player in the final of the European Championships. The player played great, but after the first game, they came in. I had a cup of water ready for the game, and I got soaked. And the player they were too nervous. But they actually were performing because they actually trained to cope with being nervous. They didn't stop being nervous. They actually trained, and all the focus that they'd done in the training hall, etc., was to go out there and do what they needed to do to beat people. And so their focus was always, what do I need to do in the next point? What do I need to do there? And they were nervous.
Big straw.
Yeah, that's right. They got very thirsty actually.
Can I change the subject on here for a minute? Matt, please, I think it's yours. What happens to clubs that are outside the talent development centres?
Yeah, I mean
Where do they put their...
Yeah, I mean the thing is, the talent development centres and the clubs need to work alongside each other. So the sort of idea with the talent development centre is to create a local pathway. It's not to be I think there was a slight misconception at the beginning that they were to be the centre for all the area, like the old regions and everything, everyone going to there. The idea of it is to create a local pathway and kind of recreate what we're trying to do with the England squad in terms of the number of hours practicing and the intensity in which they practice that, and create that high performance environment at the sort of very top end of their group. But the other clubs, I mean, all the clubs in the country all have different names. So there's some clubs that are just there for participation and to get people active and everything, and they're very, very important. There's also clubs like Sippenham and other clubs where they were high performance clubs before, and for me, they work alongside the talent development centres that are currently there, because they've actually already got that pathway there.
But who then identifies them? I mean, you come here and identify here, the marvellous setup here, fabulous, and you identify that. Nobody ever comes to Sippenham and identifies.
Yeah, and the England youth squad isn't just made up of players in talent development centres. So we have, for the England youth squad, we have an assessment day which is open to everyone.
From which age? From everyone? Because I know it changed now, yeah? Is it from the national starts from 10 years old now, yeah?
Yeah, we sort of cap the, I mean, I think it's everything from 14 under for the assessment day. But that's nationwide. So you know, they don't have to be in a talent development centre to put the name forward for the England youth squad at all. That's open to everyone, because at the moment we've got 9 talent development centres, the England youth, and we're not, you know, we're an island. We don't, as Nick said, we don't have the numbers that China have, and you know, so everyone has to be involved. So in terms of being identified, that's one opportunity. And the other is that we try and make sure we get around the major competitions to see the players as well. So, you know, the Junior British Leagues, 4 Stars, and National Championships as well. So they're the opportunities we look at. And obviously, if for instance, if you had a player that you thought, actually, this is someone that you should maybe look at, then we'll try and, you know, we'll try and see them at the next competition they'll be at, or something like that. So it's completely open and not just.
And what age you look at initially?
I mean, we've said sort of from 14 and under.
Yeah, but what lower age?
It's not so much the age; it's more the standard, and where they're at in terms of their development. So if there's a 9-year-old player who's there and they're actually showing the attributes that they're of the level, then for me that's absolutely fine.
Yeah. So you're happy to look at potential rather than achievement as yet?
Yeah. Because going back to what Nick was saying, it's not so much about what are they achieving at the moment. It's how they actually trying to play. What is their game plan? How they developing? How quick do they learn? And looking at all those attributes rather than, okay, well, I mean, there's got to be some results there, so they're showing that they can perform to a level, but it's a big picture, and it's not sort of a crystal ball like, right, yes you can make it, you can't, because it's, you know, people develop at different stages and different ages. So.
Thank you.
I go on to Nicky. I don't want to sound question bad, but what about like today? We see the young squad, yeah, from age under 12, which is the Jimmy Liu, down to like Tommy Jarvis, yeah. Why you just in the same time just taking the under 12 players to up to 12?
Why you doing the same time the squad for under 11, under 12, and under 18?
Yes.
What is the reason?
Why is the reason? Yeah. Because I don't understand what happened for what is the bonus for like Tommy Jarvis, you know, Jarvis for today, you know. Like I know he's got like 2-3 players, you know, but I know he's good for the young players. He's brilliant, you know. But I don't know what about Tintin, you know, and how you would.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
sorry for this question.
No,
I don't want to be rude, you know.
It's down to all sorts of reasons. The number of staff we have, the finance, but also, you know, Tom Jarvis is getting good practice here because we've got 2 sparrows, and also one of his teammates is here as well. The other player lives in Sweden. Our junior boys, the standard of the junior boys is 3 or 4 players who are at a real good standard. Then there's a sort of bit of a gap, and then there's, you know, a lot of other players. We don't have the depth of players in each age group to have separate teams, and it would be ideal to have an under-12 squad where we could have, you know, coaches there and have sparrows, etc. Staff, time and money is an issue, but it's something that, again, we're trying to evolve. The programme that we've introduced over the last 2 years has gone from 30 days training to 40 next year. 40 days next year, plus every fortnight we see the players for 4 hours training. So we're getting more contact time, but it's the same squad, admittedly. But if we get more staff, and you know, there is some funding from somewhere, then we can look at, you know, increasing the programme, and, you know, looking at under-12 squads, etc., so that we're not just having 3 or 4 under-12 players or 2 or 3 under-12 players. We're looking at, you know, where if we talent ID and we've got 20, we should be able to have 20. And if
I
there's
just
12
think how you
people,
manage, like Jimmy is under 12 and you've got big boy, and how the sleeping, accommodation, everything, the eating together, I was thinking how is that
well,
working,
that's,
it's just...
well, that's okay, because I mean the older players, and we are trying to create a squad mentality as well, so that it's not all about me, it's about us and the team and the squad, and it's a difficult philosophy to get all the players to take on board. And we're trying to create that squad mentality whereby everyone learns from each other, and we don't expect our best players to come here and play with all the other players and not get some benefit. So that's why we have sparrows. We'd like to have 4 sparrows here. Some of the camps we've had 3 or 4 sparrows. This one we've got 2. But the squad mentality is that everyone learns from each other, so that the young kids who come in see Tom Jarvis practicing and working as hard as he does and playing the game he's trying to play, so that Amrul, Hussein, Jamie Lou and people like that, or the younger ones here, Joe Cope and whoever, see what's expected. And so they know what we expect of them. But it's important that we've got our top players, if we have this squad mentality, that our top players are there, so that they are training in the environment, helping the other players in all sorts of different ways, so that all the players, as I say, all the players benefit. And the social side of it is a little bit of a challenge, because we don't have a national centre, therefore we stay in hotels. And the players can't go in each other's bedrooms, certainly girls can't go in boys' bedrooms, boys can't go in girls' bedrooms. If you get 6 or 8 boys in a bedroom at a travel lodge, there's mayhem. So, we've got to manage that. So the social side of a training camp can be difficult, and lots of the camps that we have, we invoke quite strong discipline, because we've got to, because it's difficult to do anything socially, and the mix is you've got 16, 17-year-olds and 12-year-olds, so there is a mix. But I have to say that the groups that we have, I mean, my sons are involved in swimming and football, and although we moan about some of the table tennis players, they are angels compared to footballers. Angels. So the social side is a challenge, but well, no, but there's still we still have our issues. I mean, there's still some issues.
Are you likely to get more funding out of the success in the World Championship?
We hope so.
Because they always say that you've got to prove that you're
I mean,
at medal and winning.
Getting a bronze medal at the World Championships is more difficult than winning at the Olympics.
So is that likely to give you the ticks?
We hope so. UK sport and sporting.
Okay.
And we're hoping that. The youth players are making some progress as well. I mean, the girls won the Italian Open team event. I don't think we won a team event in the girls for 30 years. And we weren't the best team there. It wasn't the strongest international competition we've been to, but we were ranked 6th as a team, and they won it.
It ticks a box.
Yeah, so the other, and Tom Jarvis and some of the other players, Tintin, they're getting to the latter stages of tournaments now. So the overall signs are that there's a number of players are starting to get success on the international circuit, which is what we're about. If someone wins the national championships, that's great, but so what, as far as we're concerned? They need to be winning medals or producing whatever they need to produce internationally, and that's what we're here to train them, to help them to do that. We're not here to train them to be national champions, and unfortunately some players train to be national champions and going, possibly playing for England is just a nice ride out to Italy or wherever it is, and we can't have that philosophy. And I would say that we're getting success changing that philosophy. There's more players now are understanding what it's about, and the England Youth Squad programme is about winning internationally, and that ethos and that idea is really important, and the squad mentality that we're trying to create is all about that. So everything that we do is about achieving at international level. You could say we're putting pressure on the players at 12-year-old or whatever, but that's the nature of, you know, sport is competitive, and we are, if we are criticised for trying to put players under pressure at 12-year-old, when we go abroad and play the other 12-year-olds, they are tigers and tigresses, you know, and they might be under pressure, but they love it, and there's lots of them. And one of the reasons why France organised the Euro Minis, as it now is, under 12s and under 11s, and there's like 400 or 500 players enter, is because they had a training programme that started at 8 years old with 400 coaches involved throughout France, and there was no competition. And the coaches, a lot of the coaches didn't see international competition so much. This is like 10, 12 years ago, and they wondered what they should do. So one of the coaches came up with this idea. We'll try and do Euro Minis for two reasons. One is to give the players the knowledge of international competition, so they go and play there and play against the international players of their age and realise where they were compared to the other top players in Europe if they all turned up. But also, and more importantly, to educate the parents and coaches who were training the young players in France. This is who you've got to beat. And that was the main idea of starting that tournament off, even though they had a great programme involved.
So if I could just touch on that, we spoke about it earlier. You can find their programme, spoke about it earlier on the YouTube. So, you know, like I said, that I search like table tennis schools or wherever on YouTube, but obviously translate into French. The amount of videos that come up are insane. So when you get in, translate the word school, because I cannot remember what it is. Pardon? La carte, tennis, the table. And then you're in. Okay, but honestly, when you do that, the amount of stuff that come up and the amount of ideas you'll get, because they've got their system and it is pretty impressive. All the players coming through, but it's worth having a look. Yeah.
Sort of last question. Sean's been really quiet.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
Can I just come in and I'd like to say the same thing? I said earlier in the meeting we had here that I recently got involved a lot with disabled, and it's a fantastic, different world altogether. You can change your whole concept. Now, Sean, I know, is trying to introduce disabled into the main squads here. Explain what the intentions are.
Yeah, so my reason being down here this weekend, this week sort of thing, is trying to build a relationship with Table Tennis England. So I'm responsible for the juniors and the youngsters coming forwards. It's to try and trying to get players involved with the setup that they got here, and mainly because it replicates. I mean, taking some key words that Nick points out tonight, the environment. They're trying to install a professional environment that is replicated on the international scene. So they get the benefit